Hey guys, in this video I want to show you the project flow editor. So in Giraffe we could draw a geometry and we can add a flow to it. And then if I add that flow, there it is. This one's very simple. It just takes a square, makes it landscape, populates it with points, and then converts those points to trees. And that's how you get a little forest with a grass floor. Okay, so that's a flow attached to a geometry. But we have this concept of a project flow. It's currently called the derivative editor, and it is experimental, but it sits up here. And I'm going to show you how it works. So it has access to every single geometry in the project. And there's a few cool features, new function blocks that I will show you. But first, we just need to set up some geometry. So you can see here I'm drawing some lines. And if I come up to the derivative editor, you can see here are the lines that I've just drawn. Line string, line string, line string. They don't have a usage. They're just black line strings with these little IDs. And you can see there's a filter here. And that is that the boundary, there's a boundary property, so a column heading called boundary, and it has to be 1. And currently there's nothing like that, so nothing's happening. So in the flow editor, nothing's happening, right? There's none being passed because nothing's arriving. Hop on that, and so I'll hop into these geometries. I've selected them all, and I'm going to add boundary, set it to 1, the trailing comma, and hit save. And immediately something happens, right? A parking lot is generated and a building. And what's nice, what's more efficient with this flow is I'm just dragging one curve and I'm updating 2 geometries. So the traditional way of doing this would be to draw a warehouse like this, and then draw a car park like this. And then if you wanted to change that line, you go down 2, right? And then if you wanted to grow it back, you'd have to go, And if you wanted to step it out, you go, Whereas with this, everything's tied together kind of parametrically, right? So one move of the hand and everything updates, which is really cool. Okay, but so let's chase the data flow through. All right, so recalling, I selected all of the curves and I added this boundary and I set it to 1. And if I come to the project flow, which is called the derivative editor, you can see now I have a boundary property and it's set to 1. And this filter is saying tick, 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 these 3 geometries are selected. If I add another geometry, there it is, but doesn't have boundary set to 1. It's just, and we come back. There's this black geometry at the bottom. It doesn't have boundary set to 1, so it doesn't pass the filter, so it's not passed into the flow editor. All right, so then there's these 3 curves are passed into the flow editor, and there's 2 more blocks that we've added to the flow editor. The first is enclosed polys. What it does is it takes open line strings and it generates the internal closed polygons. So you can see this line here, this big outside and that stripe, they actually make that polygon and that polygon and that polygon. And so these are closed polygons. It's really cool. So from open line strings to closed polygons. And then we have a filter block. And the filter block filters in 2 ways. You can either add a property filter or you can use this index filter. And out passes the yes and the no, the true and the false. So things that are past the filter go yes, things that don't pass go into the no. And then there's sort of familiar blocks here. This is just offsetting, using the grid to create a series of lines internal to these polygons, offsetting them and making them dark blue landscape, which stack on the roof, and that represents the solar panels. And then we are insetting these things and calling them warehouse. So we want to the yes, we want the warehouses to go. So I'm just going to choose this. Currently, index 0 and index 2, so that and that polygon are going up to the warehouse. So let's turn that one off. So we only have that as the warehouse. And then we're doing the filter again. So everything that fails the first filter comes to a second filter. And the idea here is that the things that pass this filter will become detention basin. The things that fail will go into a third filter. So let's pass this filter down. So this little guy becomes the detention basin. And then this guy becomes car park. So if I save now, we have what I want, which is a warehouse and a car park and a detention basin. Now, everything's hooked up to analytics. So the warehouse area, which is just this area over here, is 12,282, and that is the gross area. And if I draw a polygon, you should see it's about that amount. Yes, that's 11,000, so that's about right. And the warehouse parking required is equal to that area, so that 12,281 divided by 40, so one park for every 40 square meters, which means there's 307 car parks required. And then the parking provided is just the total count of the number of parks. As you can see, that's 498. So we've got too many car parks right now. And this is where it gets really fun doing this, because what you can do is stretch this out and change both numbers at once. So you can see as I grow the warehouse, the amount of parking required is going up and the amount of parking provided is going down because I'm shrinking the car park and growing the warehouse at once. And you can see this is sort of how a lot of generative design works. You do this and then you get the computer to move this line across, right, until it matches, until those two numbers match. Currently, I'm just eyeballing it. And hopefully that will solve it at some point. And then I'm doing the same thing with the detention pond. So it's per, for every 30 square meters of roof, you need some detention, and this thing's 1 meter deep. So, because obviously detention is measured in volume, right? Okay, so let's do one last thing, just to show you some of the limitations and the complexities here. I'm going to try and model up this little scheme over here. All right, so first thing I'll do is get a line. I just quickly whip it around the edge. And then I'm going to set this up like this. And I'm putting those little danglers at the end just so I can extrude those boys. I'll set up another line here. And why not one more? And a final one. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all those lines that I've just created. How accurate should we be? Let's be fully accurate, or at least one degree more accurate than this. Okay, let's see how this goes. Okay, so I'm going to grab all of those lines. There's 6 of them, and I'm going to add that property, boundary equals 1, and they shall be passed into the project flow. All right, boom, bang, bang. All right, something happens. Now you can see everything's mixed up. The building is being turned into a park, and the park's being turned into a building, and that's because those filters aren't set up correctly. So let's go and just set them up. So we get into the derivative editor. You can see all of the geometries are coming through. And here we go. Now, the first thing is this first filter, which passes the bits up, the true here, the yes, whatever comes out of yes gets turned into a building. So we want we want 5, we want 3, and we want 2 to be passed as buildings. That's right. Okay. Now, the next filter here is the thing that is I'm just going to save because I didn't draw a detention pond. Well, there's actually no detention basin in this instance. All right, so the thing that's true here gets to be a detention basin. So we're going to say nothing's going to be true. It's all going to go up here. And now the thing that is in this, the thing that is true gets into becomes landscape, and the thing that's false becomes car park. So let's just, it's the opposite of this. Those are the landscape, and that's the car park. Right, there will be a more intuitive way of doing this, but you can sort of see. Okay, so there we go. Got these 2 big landscaped areas, got these 3 big buildings, and we've got this nice little industrial estate. And if we turn it down, you see we're more or less right. There's this building, and now I can do that efficient editing where I'm just pulling this and I'm editing. It's a little confusing editing because I've got a few setbacks in the flow. So my line gets set back an additional meter. So it's a little confusing, but you can sort of imagine how this all, if you set this up properly, how this can work. You can see also here, you would want to be pulling this back ever so slightly, like this. There you go. Cool. All right, let's just turn that back up. Okay, so hopefully it's quite a long video, but hopefully you can sort of see the, I guess, the power of this, why you might use it. Um, this kind of line-based design can be very powerful, can be very nice, can also be very annoying. So it's not going to be fit for every purpose. But I'll follow up with a few more videos that show you how you can use some other modeling techniques to massively accelerate stuff. And I would emphasize this is beta, so uh, tread lightly. Things will change. The UI will be improved rapidly over the next couple of weeks.